Every once in a while, I come across a herbivore, which is an animal that only feeds on plant matter, that is worthy of consideration because they can be interesting and they can be deadly when they're defending themselves or, more importantly, their family. And the reason why the one-horned rhino, to me, is such an incredible defender is really down to its temper. I mean, unfortunately, like many rhino species throughout Africa and Asia, they are being heavily persecuted, and it's all down to their horn. Rhino horn is actually not made of bone or ivory. It's made of a substance called keratin, the same substance that our fingernails and our hair are made of. But, unfortunately, the Chinese believe it has medicinal purposes, which is absolutely idiotic. And there is no scientific proof that it works, but regardless, they just don't listen. And now these animals are being heavily persecuted. But there is a fair bit of hope. I mean, with breeding populations in captivity, like at Chester Zoo, but also armed patrols monitoring the rhinos 24 hours a day, and making money from rhinos with tourism, tracking them down with cameras rather than guns. Of course, the one-horned rhino is not critically endangered. I mean, it's kind of in between threatened and endangered, but even so, this animal is still slowly rising in populations in the wild, and to this day continues to be one of the most incredible creatures on the planet. This is their range. And now, I'm going to show you all the difference between the rhino species in Africa and Asia. There's the white rhino and the black rhino. The white rhino is just a little bit bigger, or about the same size as the Greater One-Horned Rhino, and it has two horns, but it's also the more sociable of the rhino and is usually found in groups. The black rhino has two horns, but it also has a beak-shaped mouth, because unlike the flat-mouthed white rhino that grazes on grass, the black rhino is a browser, which means it feeds on low shrubs and trees, and this is more critically endangered. Then there's the Sumatran rhino, which has two horns and lives in the jungles of Sumatra, and that is another species that is critically endangered because there's only a few hundred or a few thousand left in the wild. And then there's the Greater One-Horned Rhino. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is one of the most elusive predators in the world. It is the snow leopard. Snow leopards are found in the Himalayan mountain range. Now, the Himalayas are the highest mountains on the planet. And snow leopards are found in those mountains where they are a top predator that feeds on mountain goats, blue sheep, sambar deer, bulls, and even things as big as yaks. And of course, they are built to basically go off-road, and they will, of course, they have a thick tail that carries lots of fat reserves, but also they have a greyish-white white coat which can blend in with their background, and they can run down almost vertical cliff faces after prey, and once they catch their prey, they finish it with a bite to the neck. Like all big cats, apart from lions, Snow leopards are solitary for much of their lives, with the exceptions of mothers and their cubs. Of course, a snow leopard can have usually about 2 or 3 cubs, and she'll raise them for about 2 years before they leave to find their own territories. In fact, incredibly, snow leopards have become more and more popular in the last few decades because in Philip Pullman's trilogy, His Dark Materials, Azrael Blackwell, who was the father of Lyra Silvertongue and the man who led the rebellion against the authority, his demon was Stalmaria, settled as a snow leopard, which I think was actually quite fitting because snow leopards are ruthless, solitary, and can be ferocious predators, and that pretty much matched Azrael's personality as a solitary, silent, and sadistic hunter. Unfortunately, snow leopards, although they survive the harsh winter months, they are ruthlessly hunted by poachers who want their bones for medicine and their fur for decoration. But also, they are hunted by humans, like local people in the Himalayas, because occasionally they prey on livestock when their natural prey isn't available, and that leads to human-wildlife conflict. But, fortunately, snow leopards are having hope with breeding populations being built in captivity, such as with Chester Zoo and Twycross Zoo, building breeding populations of these cats in captivity, and also conservationists working with local people to learn how to coexist with snow leopards. Even so, you could spend months in snow leopard territory without seeing them. Even local people, like yak herders who live their whole lives in the Himalayas, very rarely see a snow leopard. And here is their range. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you all is the largest animal that has ever known to have lived. It is the blue whale. Now, the blue whale is the largest animal alive. It's even bigger than the largest dinosaurs. And when I say the largest, I mean it can grow to be over 30 meters long, weigh as much as a jumbo jet. Its tongue alone weighs as much as an elephant, and its heart weighs as much as a small car. And they are predators. They are, in fact, the largest of the baleen whales. The baleen whales have a substance called baleen, which hangs from their upper jaw, and that's made of keratin, like our fingernails. And baleen acts as a sieve where they take, because these whales will take in huge mouthfuls of water which can contain krill, plankton and small fish, and they then squeeze the water out, and the baleen acts like a sieve where that stops its prey getting out, and they can then use their enormous tongue to slurp down enormous tons of food. Of course, blue whales mainly feed on krill, which are a shrimp-like crustacean, but they will also feed on plankton and small shells of fish, or shoals of small fish. And they are solitary for much of their lives, but they can occasionally form groups of about 3 or 5 animals, and that can be a way to defend themselves against their only natural predator, the killer whale or orca. And killer whales or orca or killer whales have been known to attack fully grown blue whales, and that by getting into groups of about 3 can be a good way to defend themselves. But blue whales are an animal that for many years people never got a chance to see, because around the 1990s they were in serious trouble because of whaling, which had decimated their numbers from 250,000 to just a few thousand, because they were hunted for their meat, their fat, and special oil that they keep inside their heads. Of course, it was only until like the 1980s, when commercial whaling was banned, that these whales were made a protected species. But while only 3 countries have continued whaling, fortunately Iceland and Norway have learned from the mistakes of the past and don't practice whaling as heavily anymore. But the Japanese are still lobbying to allow commercial whaling to return. Of course, for many years, blue whales were impossible to see around the world because they are endangered. They live way out in the deep sea. But a few years ago, scientists learned that there was a population of blue whales living off the coast of Sri Lanka in Asia, in the Indian Ocean, even as far as the Maldives. And that's all down to a series of currents which sweep underwater trenches, and they lead to blooms of krill. Which lead to blooms of krill, which are the crustaceans that the blue whales feed on. Sorry about that. And of course, while you can see blue whales off the coast of Sri Lanka, it's still no guarantee that you'll be able to see them, because despite their size, they can move very, very fast, and that they can also dive to well over 300 meters, and they can be down underwater for over an hour. Of course, they're of no danger to human beings at all. But if you were krill or small fish, these would be your living nightmare. I mean, slowly, blue whale populations are starting to build back up. But even so, with the Japanese lobbying to allow commercial whaling to return, they're still a threat. They're still a threat to blue whales. And here is the range of the blue whales. In fact, around here, off the coast of Sri Lanka and even into the Maldives, around the Indian Ocean, is the best place in the world to see blue whales. And before I move on to the next animals, I'm going to show you the size of marine mammals. That's like how big they can get. The blue whale can grow up to 33 meters long and weigh 180 tons. Then there's the fin whale, which is the second largest animal alive today. It can grow to be 27 meters long and weigh 100 tons. Then the humpback whale, which can grow to be 18 meters long and weigh 40 tons. And the largest fish, the whale shark, can grow to be 18 meters and weigh 18 tons. Whereas the great white shark, which is the largest predatory fish, can grow to be 6 meters long. The orca, or killer whale, which is the largest species of dolphin and the natural predator of blue whales, can grow to be 9 meters long and weigh 4 tons. And there's the giant sunfish, which can grow to be 3